Hello guys, how are you? Guys, I'm Satyanarayan. I'm a 2019 batch IPS officer, and in civil service exam 2018 I scored 298 in sociology. I scored 165 in paper 1 and 133 in paper 2. So in the next half an hour we are going to talk about R.K. Merton. R.K. Merton basically is an American sociologist, and he adopted the functionalist framework to analyze his work, and he was a disciple of Talcott Parson. So basically, you know Talcott Parson, if you have seen my previous videos, like he believed in proposing grand theories. So basically, Talcott Parson wanted to develop a theory which can explain everything, while R.K. Merton didn't believe in such grand theories. He advocated for middle range theories, and he said that it is not necessary that one single theory can explain everything. So that is the major difference between Talcott Parson and R.K. Merton's work. So first of all, let's see some of the questions which UPSC have asked from R.K. Merton. So basically, if we see the syllabus of UPSC, R.K. Merton's functional analysis is one dimension of Merton, and then deviance and conformity, that is the second aspect of R.K. Merton. So basically he worked on multiple things, and these two are deviance and conformity. This is a separate topic, and functionalism and what are manifest functions, what is latent function, what are functions, what are dysfunctions, this is a separate question. So we will deal this concept of R.K. Merton in two different videos. In this video we are going to talk about functionalism. So in 2020 UPSC asked this question: what are the reactions of R.K. Merton to functionalism of social anthropologists? Basically, you know that functionalism originated in the work of anthropologists, and then thinkers like Herbert Spencer, Auguste Comte, and later on Emile Durkheim, they brought functionalism to the realm of sociology. So this is the question, that what is the reaction of Merton to the functionalism of these classical social anthropologists, and what are the limitations of latent functions. Now guys, if you see 2006, UPSC asked this same question in 2020. If you see the wording of these two questions, there is no difference at all. So my point is that UPSC keep on repeating questions. So from the core part of your syllabus, if you have covered all the questions very well which UPSC have asked in the previous years, it will be easier for you to write answers, and it will be easier for you to write basically good answers which can fetch you good marks. So that is my appeal to you, that you keep a copy of all the previous year questions starting from 2000, and you go through all the questions, you try to answer them. In 2019 they asked what according to Merton is the difference between unanticipated consequences and latent functions. So basically, latent and manifest functions, they are consequences at different levels that we will see. Then UPSC asked what is the difference between these latent functions, means functions which are hidden at the surface level, and unanticipated consequences. So we are going to answer this question in our next video, in next slides. In 2016 they asked analyze the manifest and latent functions of security of tenure of the bureaucrats in the light of Merton's theory. So if you want to get application of any theory, you should be very thorough with the theory part of it. So if you are clear like what is manifest function, what is latent function, then it will be easier for you to analyze the security of tenure of the bureaucrats. So if we just say in like few lines, latent functions are deeper functions which are not known to the observer or not known to the analyst at the very beginning level, at the very primary level. So from common point of view, we can say that security of tenure may be inefficient because it promotes inefficiency. If the tenure of a bureaucrat is secure, then he will not be encouraged to work to give his maximum efforts. But then there are latent functions of that. If the bureaucrats are not given tenure security, bureaucrats, they need to take loads of decisions, and sometimes those decisions are risky also. So if you don't give them the tenure security, you may feel that they will be very reluctant to take decisions, and your bureaucracy will become defunct. So at this level you have to analyze things in such manner. So once you read the theory of latent and manifest functions, you will be analyze it in more deeper details. Then in 2014 UPSC also asked again the application of the same thing, and this time they asked the application of latent and manifest functions to explain the persistence of corruption in the Indian society. So from the common sense point of view, you know that corruption is bad in itself, and it should not be there in the society. What functions does it play? But if you go deeper into the why corruption persists in society, because it is a persistent phenomena of almost each and every society, so then you have to analyze at the deeper level that why the corruption is persistent in India, and what are its manifest functions and what are its latent functions. So now let's start our discussions. Once we have seen what questions UPSC have asked, we will see and we'll start from the scratch. So first of all, we will understand what is functionalism. This is classical functionalism. So functionalism is a theory, or you can say a framework of analysis in which the entire system is seen to be composed of different parts. For example, this is the system, so it is composed of 4 different parts, and all these parts, they are working in coherence with each other, and they are making the system to survive. So basically this is the analogy which is brought from the organisms or human bodies. For example, this is analogy between society and organisms such as human body. So if we consider human body, our different organs in human body, they function in coherence, in coordination with each other, so that the human body keep on functioning, and it can keep on surviving. So similarly, this analysis framework has been brought in sociology or social anthropology to explain why different societies keep on surviving. So the simple logic is that functionalists or the functionalism, it views society as a system that is a set of interconnected parts which works together to form a whole. So society is a whole, and each and every different parts, they are working in coordination with each other, so that the entire system can keep on functioning. So a function of any system is seen as what is its contribution to what is the contribution it makes to the system, so that the system can keep on working efficiently. So if we see society, then we can see family, religion, these are different social institutions. So the functionalists, they see that family, religion, education, polity, economy, they all are parts of the system, and they work in consonance, they work in tandem with each other, and they are forming this social system rather than they are being isolated parts. So I think what is functionalism, it is clear to you. If you draw this analogy, then understanding of any organ of human body involves understanding of its relationship to the other organs, and in particularly what is its contribution towards the maintenance of organism. Similarly, if we analyze society, then what is the contribution of each and every social institution, each and every social practice towards maintenance of the society. That is simply functionalism. Now, how functionalism developed in sociology? So it originated in the works of Auguste Comte and Herbert Spencer. You know, they are the founder sociologists, and later it was developed in detail by Emile Durkheim, and later it was refined by Talcott Parsons. So Talcott Parsons was a very staunch advocate of this functionalism, and he said that functionalist analysis, it refers to the contribution of the part to the whole. That is already clear. Particularly, function of any part of society is the contribution it makes to the meeting of functional prerequisites. So functional prerequisite was a concept which was developed by Talcott Parsons, and he said there are certain needs of a society. If those needs are not met, then the society will collapse. So in terms of Talcott Parsons, function of any part of a society is the contribution it makes to the meeting of the functional prerequisites of social system. This is just another way to define the functions. And parts of society are functional insofar as they maintain the system and contribute for its survival. So if you want to understand this from the example of family, what is the role of family, or what is the contribution of family? It helps in reproduction of the members, so that new members keep on adding to the society, and then socializing those new members to the ways and means of the society. so that there is completely coherence between the values of individual and the values of society. That is the role of family. So similarly, what is the role of religion? The functionalist analysis, they say the religion is an integrative force, and it integrates the social system by reinforcing common values of the society. So that's how the functionalist analysts, they see that each and every part is beneficial for the system, it plays a positive role for the system, and that's why the system keep on surviving and keep on functioning. Now this theory or this framework was questioned by, particularly by Marxist frameworks and then critical analysts, and they said that because functionalists focus mainly on the question that how social systems are maintained, their focus has shifted, or it has biased towards analyzing the positive part of the society. So it is not necessary that each and every social institution or each and every social practice has only positive roles, but because the aim of functionalists is to analyze the positive part, they are like over evaluating the contribution of any part, and they tend to forget the negative roles which are played by any practice. So with their concern for investigating how functional prerequisites are met, functionalists have concentrated on functions rather than dysfunctions. So it is not always necessary, this was introduced by R.K. Merton, that it is not always necessary that each and everything will have positive aspects only. So it can have some negative aspect on also, and those negative aspects or negative contribution is defined as dysfunctions. So the emphasis has resulted in many institutions being seen as beneficial and useful to the society. So if you see the modern democratic society, so is caste system is in harmony with the modern values of democracy, and does caste system strengthens the your democratic values, and does it provide social mobility to all? The answer is no, it is not always. The caste system can play negative role many a times. So if you see that if you analyze from the functionalist's point of view, then caste system is perfect, caste system is plays only positive role, but the critical thinkers, they said it is not always true. That's why they says that functionalism is status quoist. But the credit to R.K. Merton is that he removed this part from the functionalist analysis, and he introduced the concept of functions and dysfunctions, and he said that now because we are analyzing the negative and the positive role of each and every practice, so this question tag that functionalism is status quoist, it was removed by R.K. Merton. So indeed some institutions such as family, religion, social stratification, they have not been seen as beneficial but also as dispensable. So some functionalists have gone beyond this level, and for example your Davis and Moore, they say that some form of social stratification is present in each and every form of society. G.P. Murdoch, he said some form of family is present in each and every society. So because the functionalists, they have said that they are always playing positive role and they are also indispensable for the system. This was questioned first by Marxist thinkers, and later it was questioned in detail by R.K. Merton. So that from here onwards we refer to the functionalism which was developed by R.K. Merton. So basically he attempted to refine the classical functionalism rather than abandoning it. He kept on working on the functionalist framework, but he said that I am going to refine the classical functionalism and I am going to introduce the dysfunction part also. So he said that there are three assumptions based on which the functionalist analysis, they analyze any things. So he questioned those three assumptions, and he said that these assumptions, they should not be taken as granted, rather than they are a matter of inquiry. So the first assumption is the postulate of functional unity of society. So what does functional unity of society means? It states that any part of social system is functional for the entire system. So for example, religion is a part of social system. Now according to the classical functionalist, religion is beneficial for the entire system. But Merton argues that in complex societies and particularly in highly differentiated societies, this functional unity is doubtful. For example, if society is composed of multiple faiths and multiple religion, the religion may not be integrative always, it may be divisive sometimes. So basically this is the first postulate which was questioned by R.K. Merton, that nothing is functional for the entire system. It may have positive aspect for some part of the system, but it is not always true that the entire system is getting benefit out of that one particular social practice or social institutions. So all parts of society are seen to work together for the maintenance and integration of the society. This is not always true, and he provides the example of religious pluralism to illustrate this point. So in a society with various faiths and religion, it may tend to divide rather than unite, that I have already told. Second assumption is known as postulate of universal functionalism. So it states that all standardized social or cultural forms have positive functions. So here Merton introduced the concept of dysfunctions, and he said that not everything is always functional, it can be non-functional or it may be dysfunctional also. So what do we mean by dysfunctions? Dysfunctions means it may also play negative role. So for example, poverty. So poverty, there was a scholar, Herbert Genge. He argued that poverty survives because it plays the positive role for the society. There is a poverty industry, that's why many people get job out of that. And if poverty does not survive, if poverty does not exist, then who will perform the menial jobs and who will perform the dirty jobs? So basically a concept known as poverty, which is not desirable or which is not a positive value, it was analyzed by Herbert Genge in a positive notion, and he said that poverty survives because it plays a positive role. So this is the assumption which was questioned or which was criticized by R.K. Merton. He said that not everything is functional, it may also have negative aspects, it may lessen the coordination which is being present among or between different social institutions. So that is the second an assumption which was questioned by R.K. Merton. And third assumption is postulate of indispensability. So as I have already argued that many of the scholars, functionalist scholars, they said that family is indispensable. Then Davis and Moore claim that religion plays a unique and indispensable part in the society and it is always positive in nature. So then G.P. Murdoch says that family is always present in all the forms of society, so it is indispensable. But R.K. Merton argues that it is not always true. It may the same functional prerequisites, they may also be met by some other social or other alternative institutions. So it is not necessary that the value of the job of socialization or the job of reproduction, it is always possible in family also. It may be met by some alternative form of institutions. So nowadays you see while technology is improving, the possibility of single parent family and the possibility of same sex family, they are also becoming possible. So that was the argument of R.K. Merton, and he said that we should never begin with the assumption that these social institutions, they always play positive role and they are like indispensable for the society. He said that there is no such social institution is indispensable and everything can be replaced by some other social institutions. So there is no justification for assuming that institutions such as family, religion, social stratification, they are necessary and they are part of all the human society. It will be very naive to consider it, and for that he introduced the concept of functional equivalents or functional alternatives, but we need not to go in detail. We are just bothered what he questioned. So we can summarize that Merton argues that the postulates of functional unity of society, the universal functionalism and indispensability, these are the three assumptions. They are little more than articles of faith. So Merton said that they are articles of faith and they should not be assumed or no such prior assumption should be formed. Rather than they are a matter of investigation. Each and everything should be investigated, whether it has a positive role or it has a negative role, or it plays a functional role or it is dysfunctional for the society, and whether there are other alternative institutions which can play the same contribution which is played by one form of social institution. So basically Merton claims that his framework for functionalist analysis, it removes the charge that functionalism is ideologically biased. Sorry for missing I here. So it is not based. So this is the basically main contribution of R.K. Merton, that he removed the charge that functionalism is ideologically biased, and he introduced certain kind of balance in the functionalist analysis. Now we will in brief we will describe what are functions and what are dysfunctions, but during our previous discussion I think it is already clear to you that what is functions and what is dysfunctions. Functions are the positive aspect of any social institution which it helps in maintenance of the society or maintenance of the system. So dysfunctions, they are negative of it, they are reverse of it, and according to Merton, dysfunctions are those observed consequences which lessen the adaptation or adjustment of the system. He introduced functions as observed consequences which makes for the adaptation or adjustment of the system. So the negative part of it which lessen the adaptation or adjustment of the system, basically any social institution which plays the negative role which is placed by that social institution is the dysfunction. So for example, instead of intensifying the democratic ideal, this example I have already discussed, caste tends to lessen the degree of mobility, it also lessen the democratization and participation. That is why caste may be classified as dysfunctional. So while you are voting on the caste lines, or if your voting behavior is biased by the caste identity, then you are not promoting the ideal form of democracy. Although it can be argued that even if you vote, if your voting pattern is based on caste lines, there is nothing wrong in that. Nobody is saying that voting on caste line is wrong, but the democratic ideals, they are not met by such form of caste based behavior or caste based voting behavior. So that's why it says that caste system plays a negative role for the democratization of the society, and that's why caste system is seen as dysfunctional. So dysfunctions, according to Merton, imply the concept of strain, stress and tension on the structural level, and therefore it provides an analytical approach to study the dynamics and change. So basically if you just focus on the positive contribution, it helps in maintenance of the system. So how the system changes or how the social change takes place. Merton argues that the dysfunctions, they introduced the strain and stress in at the structural level of the society, and that helps in bringing change in the society. Now we move to the second aspect of functional analysis of R.K. Merton, and it is latent and manifest functions. So manifest function, as the term itself suggests, which are manifest at the superficial level, but latent means some positive contribution. It is not dysfunctions, but it is positive contribution, but which is not clear at the superficial level. So the participant or the analysts, they are not aware of these latent functions. So latent functions is neither intended nor recognized. So if you just see the example of Emile Durkheim's analysis of punishment. So Emile Durkheim said punishment helps the society to reduce the crime rate in the society, because it reminds the criminal that society would not permit his deviance. So this is the manifest function, that if a punishment is given to any criminal, then he will restrain in committing crime further, and he will assume that, or he will feel this thing that if you are going to do deviance, if you are going to commit crime, then society will punish you. This is the manifest function. But if you go deeper at the deeper level, then Durkheim would argue that it is not just what happens to the criminal, but when a criminal is punished, the society's faith in the collective conscience also deepens. So the immortality of the society, or the society as an entity, it feels that it has an upper hand over an individual, and whoever will commit the crime, he will be punished. So the collective conscience of the society, it is intensified by punishing one criminal. So you just, if you take the example of Nirbhaya case, so a Nirbhaya case, in the Nirbhaya case, 5 criminals, they were convicted by the court, and they were given death sentence. So that is at the superficial level, the criminals, they they were punished, they committed a crime and they were punished. So the criminals, at the level of criminals, they would have thought that they have committed a crime and the society will not tolerate their crime. But what happened to the society? Society's collective conscience was questioned, and everybody started coming to roads, and they protested, and they did all types of protests, and they demanded that the rape laws must be strengthened in the society, so that no such other criminal dares to commit such form of gruesome violence, or such form of violence against a lady or against a woman. So you know what are the repercussions of that. Then the entire rape laws were changed, the definition of rape in IPC was also changed. So that is the point I want to drive, that it is not just the criminals who is dealing with the punishment, it is also the society's collective conscience which helps the society to feel that no such sort of crime will be tolerated. So that is the latent functions of punishment. For example, we will take the example of Hopi ceremonials. So basically Hopi is a tribe in America. So they perform some rituals to produce the rainfall. So does it seem rational to you? No, it becomes irrational if you see at the superficial level. These are the advantages of latent functions which we are going to discuss. So we are taking this first advantage is that by going into the deeper levels of details, what appears irrational, it becomes meaningful. For example, the Hopi ceremonials, they are like, the ceremonials itself are not sufficient to produce rainfall, but if you go and analyze at the deeper level, you will feel that the members of the group, when they come together, when they comes at a single place to perform these rituals, it promotes the solidarity between them, it helps them to meet their the distant relatives, and it also promotes a form of revival of energy. So these are the latent functions which are not clear at the superficial level. So it reinforces their group identity and solidarity, which is no mean achievement. So although the practice of Hopi ceremonials, it may sound irrational, but because then also it has some positive role to play. So if you take example from the recent current affairs, then you know, when the Mangalyaan mission, its rover and lander, it was supposed to make soft landing on the moon, everybody was like performing yagya for its success, or they were doing some different thing for its success. They were praying in the temples, somebody were reciting some Hanuman Chalisa and these things. So do you think that by reciting some rituals or by performing some yagya, the success of Mangalyaan mission will be achieved? No, it's not. It seems irrational. But by performing these yagya and by performing these rituals, the faith of the society in religion, it intensifies. And as you already know, which is uncertain, the realm of uncertain is covered by religion. So that is the argument, that whatever is irrational at superficial level, once you go at the deeper level and if you analyze the latent functions, it may also become meaningful. Second advantage is that new horizons of inquiry begins to emerge. So once you are just not focused on the superficial level, the sociologists, they tend to delve into the hidden meanings and aspects of the cultural items and social practices. They are interested even in more those realms which may have been which may not have attracted their attention of the sociologist, but now because they think that, or they feel that if we go into the deeper details, we may find out some different latent functions, and the realm of inquiry, it widens. So for example, if you see the art films, so many of the art films, they may not sound beneficial for you, and you may see that what is their role and why they are being even made. But then these art films, they may strengthen the role of motherhood. They may also celebrate the ultimate triumph of good over evil, or they also may reinforce ideals which many fear it would get lost in a rapidly changing world. So for example, if you watch Mahabharata, the tale of Mahabharata or the narration of Mahabharata, it reinforces the different values of brotherhood, the motherhood, the role of a king, and all these things. So basically that is the latent functions of art films. So that's why once you assume that, or once you start feeling that not everything which is irrational and at the superficial level, it is not useful to study them, then if you analyze from the latent functions framework, then new horizons of inquiry begins to appear for the sociologists, and it's as a repercussion of that the realm of sociological knowledge expands. So if you explore, or if you analyze the parts which were never explored, or which were never felt like to be explored, if you analyze them, if you explore them, then your sociological knowledge widens. So the distinction between the latent function and the manifest function helps the sociologist to open the new horizons of sociological knowledge. So for example, we will take the example of T. Veblen. T. Veblen was a scholar, and he analyzed why there is conspicuous consumption in the society. So what are the latent functions of the pattern of conspicuous consumption, like why people spend so much money on costly items. So for example, if we take in the present society, why people buy such costly iPhones are like every 6 months or every year there is a new iPhone in the market, and still people are going to upgrade their level, and they spend too much amount on that. It may seem irrational, but if you see the framework which was given by T. Veblen to analyze the latent functions of this conspicuous consumption behavior, it may help them or the purchaser to reaffirm their social status. So it is an indicator of a social status. So why the example of nano failed in not the example, the experiment of nano car. You all remember this nano car was thought to be a game changer in the Indian economy, and Ratan Tata thought that everyone will be started moving on a car, although it was termed as Lakh Takiya car. But why it failed miserably, why it didn't attract the consumers? Because in Indian society particularly, and in every society, car has a status symbol attached to it. So if you have a car which is of cost of 1 lakh or 1.5 lakh, it doesn't provide the status symbol. But at the same time, if you have a bike of 1.5 lakh, it may give the feeling of that you belong to a rich family, or you belong to a socially upper class. So that status symbol is attached with these things. That's why this nano car example completely failed. So this is not clear at the superficial level. So that's why Merton argues that you go deeper into the details and you try to analyze everything from the framework of manifest and latent functions. So buying costly goods, they serve the latent functions of reaffirming one's social status. So it is in this sense that Merton says that sociologists help to increase our knowledge about the world, the consequences of our beliefs, cultural practices, lifestyles, etc. So guys, I believe that the concept of functionalism, classical functionalism, the concept of functional analysis of R.K. Merton is clear to you, and you are also thorough with the practice of the concept of functions and dysfunctions, and what are latent functions and what are manifest functions. So I believe now you can put your knowledge of this to analyze the corruption in the society, or to analyze the dowry practice. This can also be asked in UPSC. What is because dowry is surviving for long years, so what is the positive role, or what is the latent functions of dowry? This can be asked. So these type of applications you can only analyze when you are thorough with the concepts. So thank you so much guys for watching the video, and if you feel that my explanation is helpful for you, then I request you to share this video with other guys who are preparing sociology optional. And if you have not yet subscribed to the channel, I request you to subscribe to the channel, and let's spread the word that these sociology video are helpful for you guys. So thank you so much guys, have a nice day.